VCR Redux will begin in T-5 minutes.
What the fart is VCR Redux?
It's the show where we take movies from the VCR era and bring them back to today.
Well, how do we do that?
Well, we start by talking about a VHS classic, and usually you'll say something like,
I haven't been this uncomfortable since I watched Meatballs 4, Meatballs to the Rescue with my parents. Oh yeah, or you'll say something stupid like,
I wish we lived in a world where the Garbage Pail Kids made as many movies as the Muppets.
but I know you'll always see it through with a positive attitude.
I hate this movie, I hate being here, I hate all of this. Oh, Jamie Kennedy. Oh, well, shit. Well, let's go for this.
He was in Son of Mask. This is genius.
I am not a gamer. I'd rather read books. I'm just
Ian's like the old lady that's like, I got video game monsters, I got toy monsters in here.
As long as we respect the passion and the artistry that went into these films.
You know, obviously they took this movie, it's 93, right? And you're like, what do you want to see in your Mario movie? And they're like, oh, we want it to be grim, we want a lot of death, we want tits and ass.
Oh, and then we start the pitch ideas with modern day sequels like
Weekend at Bernie's 3, Cocaine Mountain.
Sometimes we take it kind of seriously.
I'll watch a Paul Verhoeven alien movie.
Oh my gosh, that alien will have more vaginas than anything you've ever seen in your life. Sometimes this Hawaiian shirted fool will pitch something stupid like,
I would take out the virtual reality stuff and just have it be about Jeff Fahey mowing the lawn.
Sometimes the best pitches come from the live chat.
Alex Bonafonte also pitches Grand Theft Starfighter Vice Galaxy.
wait, I thought I had the best pitches.
And what happens at the end of the movie? The ultimate fart. The fart that the warmth goes like all the way down to your socks.
The only rules are, there are no rules. Sometimes we cross over franchises.
Only the truck from Tango and Cash can kill Christine.
And sometimes we travel back in time.
Like 1995 is missing a good Universal Soldier sequel.
But you never know what we're gonna pitch next.
What do you want Daniel Stern behind like a muzzled mask? Like,
We all know it should be Pesci behind the mask, and like underneath the mask, you should hear him going like fritter, 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 fritter.
you are so proud of yourself for that one. I can't stand you.
I would also love to see a Charles Bronson version of It's a Wonderful Life.
What?
Direct to DVD.
If you made a shot-for-shot remake of Scarface with Goofy as Al Pacino, it would be amazing. Dorsey, you need me to be the bad guy.
It's like the worst 1987 Disney movie Disney's ever made. Schlongo, directed by Jim Wynorski.
Like, I would watch a whole bowl of that.
Do the John Holmes story. Add a comedy spin to it.
Wow, the Wonderland murders are so funny.
I'd watch it on my mobile.
Something happens and he goes into a coma. He gets like, hit by a car or something. I know this is dark, but like, bear with me. He's got to go on an
Did you just go like Hard to Kill with Ferris Bueller?
I'd watch it on my iPad.
If you want to just like throw in the kitchen sink, I mean, it all works. Like Alien vs. Predator versus RoboCop. Like if that works. Alien vs. Predator versus Terminator. That works.
Alien versus Predator versus Ernest. That works.
That works.
I respect everything you just said. I need David Silver and Terry Silver and the Sloan family all learning the Quicksilver. But they're doing it in Breakin' 3 Hydraulic Boogaloo. And it's underwater. It's going to be incredible. Eat your fucking shit out, James Cameron. I got the underwater movie you can't touch.
That was the most disgusting thing I've ever heard in my life.
Mr. Toxie goes to Washington.
My ass would be in the theater tomorrow.
If Harley Quinn gets 7 movies, then Tank Girl should get at least 70.
That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard of in my life.
I mean, why should we even bother with Look Who's Talking when Air Bud is soaring to new highs?
All I know is I want Danny McBride.
I'd want him doing anything other than writing Halloween movies, honestly. Anything that keeps him away from that fucking job, I'm for it.
Just let him talk out of his butt. I don't care how he does it.
I'd rather not.
Austin Powers doing the Macarena.
That would be the opening credits. Come on.
But we have not yet had Die Hard on a half pipe. What if John McClane Jr. was a pro skateboarder and also an avid machine gun enthusiast? Skate or Die Hard.
What up, virtual people? Welcome to the 154th episode of VCR Redux. We take your favorite franchises out of the analog era and bring them back to 2024. I'm your host, pop culture punk Chris Stiles, and since my usual co-pilots are MIA, I loaded the deck with 3 radical guests on the show tonight. First up, video store veteran and cosplay king Scott Benson is back on the show.
Come on, guys.
And he's a location scout who's worked on Law and Order and Wu-Tang and American Saga. Michael Ricci is back on the show.
Hello, everybody. Hello. Thanks for having me back.
And rounding out this righteous crew, the man who's brought to life prop scenes and locations from Sleepaway Camp and the iconic apartment from Frasier. Proof positive that big things come in small builds. The bearded miniaturist himself, Preston Poling, is back on the show.
Thanks for having me back. It's so exciting. I can't wait to dive in. I love this movie. This is one of my favorite episodes we've done.
Oh man, I am psyched. Well, we are here today to make car parts for the American working man because that's what we are and that's what we care about. And because this world needs Tommy Boy too, and we're here to bring it to you. But before we can stick our heads up a butcher's ass, we got a dish on how Tommy Boy came into our lives and what we love about it. And of course, that goes double for you at home and everyone watching the live chat. Was it Love at First Laserdisc, Vital VHS? Hit us up in the chat and let us know how Tommy Boy came into your lives. So, Scott, when did you first get Tommy Boy?
So this was while I was working in the video store days when it hit. So took it home, new releases came out on Tuesday, took it home Monday night, watched it. But our store had like a 50-inch projection set off in the corner that ran movies all day. And this movie for about 6 months got at least one daily play. So when you asked me about doing this episode, and I said, I don't even need to watch it because it's still burned in. And as soon as I watched it, it's like beat for beat. I just knew everything that there was is yep. So yeah, I've seen it a billion times now at this point. But 90, right when it came out in the 90s, what, 95? And that 95. Was it. Yeah.
That was so like my fantasy, jobs, like first job kind of like I wanted to work in the video store so bad, and that was exactly what I had hoped. Was that like, oh, you could just put on like Uncle Buck or like whatever you feel like watching that day, as long as it's not like rated R, like who's gonna care?
Uncle Buck was another one, and I was thinking about this today. Like this is almost like the quintessential 90s comedy, because in the 80s it was like you kind of had your John Hughes stuff, and then it was all a lot of raunchy boob comedies, Police Academy, Porky's, Revenge of the Nerds, and so on. And then when you got to the 90s, everything hit like this real safe PG level. And I feel like everything was kind of a showcase vehicle for a comedian or a Saturday Night Live alum.
SNL, yeah.
Pauly Shore, Chris Farley, Adam Sandler, even Julia Sweeney and Al Franken got in on, having these movies that I think
Stuart Saves His Family rules. I will defend that movie to the end of time.
Come on. I'm good enough.
I'll die on that hill. Harold Ramis is a genius, and that movie is perfection.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that Tommy Boy, I don't want to sound like I'm dissing this movie at all, because I'm not. It's just that it's like this is such a snapshot of what movies were in this time frame. Do you know what I mean? I would put like this, maybe it's Happy Gilmore.
I would go one further, and I would just say Lorne Michaels is what I would say.
Yeah,
because Lorne Michaels did this. These two guys were filming SNL while they were making this movie, and they were flying back and forth from Toronto to New York to make this movie, only because of Lorne Michaels. That's why Rob Lowe is in there, the whole thing.
And it's like you were saying, speaking of which, Wayne's World, that was the, Wayne's World was another one.
These writers wrote Wayne's World, Coneheads, and then later that 70s show. That's the only stuff they've ever done.
And it's literally like, go in and do your thing, comedian, you've got your shtick. And of course this, I think you were talking about it earlier, this is like, let Farley just be Farley, just write, take this general story and just write it around him. I don't think this movie exists without Farley, and for the most part, David Spade too is the straight man to kind of play off of. But I don't know who else you could put in this movie and how to be this movie.
It was originally it was Chris Farley and Rob Lowe as brothers, and that was the movie.
Oh wow, okay.
Right, but then Lorne Michaels sees Chris Farley and David Spade and the way they're doing stuff, and they retool the movie. and they end up keeping Rob Lowe, and that's why Rob Lowe's uncredited. And at one point, Rob Lowe was going to be unavailable, and it was going to be Matthew McConaughey. No. The way
that makes sense.
everything works out here is perfect, and the only stuff that really comes down is all the off-the-set stuff between Farley and Spade. Which
it's interesting. Rob Lowe is a hero of mine, and we definitely talked a lot about him in our St. Elmo's episode. And getting back to Brat Pack, then John Hughes thing is that I find this movie to be a lot more John Hughesian than a lot of those SNL, those other SNL movies, especially of the time. Like, it's very Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. It's very Dutch. Which was only 2 years before this movie. But Press, when did you?
I would even give it when he's at Callahan Auto and he's like by himself, and then at the end when he's talking in front of everybody, it feels like Rudy to me. It feels like we're at Notre Dame and he is Rudy and everyone's rooting for him and whatever. I mean, you really thought at the beginning of this movie this guy is going to be the hero? Like, he really comes a long way by the end.
Interesting. I could see the comparison to Rudy. Press, when did you first get Tommy Boy though?
So my buddy rented it from the video store, and I went over to his house because I was in a band and we played music together. And he's like, before we do anything, you have to watch this movie. And I'm like, I'm itching to play, it's the weekend. And so I sit down and watch it, and I'm like, you were right. I think we ended up keeping it on in the background the whole night we were there. We kept it an extra day because that was like, it was due back that day. And he's like, no, let's just keep it. We got to watch it again. Nice. So I distinctly remember he had like a second home on the property that we played music in, and we just kept it going all day long on repeat. Yeah, it was hilarious.
Perfect.
There's definitely no wrong way to Tommy Boy. And I feel like everyone's story is gonna make me like, oh man, that's like reminds me of when I first watched it. But Michael, how did you first get Tommy Boy?
It randomly was in the theater. It was like, I think it was like my uncle was like going on a date and he took us for some reason, which I don't understand because I would never want to bring like a niece or a nephew on a date. But
dude, this uncle is a movie character already, though.
I know. Well, it was weird. So like my mom is the oldest and my uncle was the youngest. So he was like 18, 19, 20 when I was growing up. So he was like close to my age than my mom's age. And there's even pictures of him holding me, and he's like 16. It looks crazy, but. Yeah, I remember it specifically, and I told him about it. He doesn't remember this at all. But I do, because I remember riding in the back seat. I remember telling my brother, like, we get to go see Tommy Boy. Like, I don't know if Mom would let us see this movie, I don't know. Because, there is drug use early, and there is stuff, there's stuff, whatever. But, I was only, at this point, I think I was only like 12 or 13, so I was pretty close to being able to go, but not quite there. But my brother was a little younger. But yeah, we loved it. I mean, we acted stuff out, my brother definitely tried to hit me with a 2x4 once for sure. But I've always loved this movie, have always held it higher. Came out with Billy Madison. I've always liked it more than Billy Madison. I've always liked it more than Black Sheep. There's only been a couple movies since that encroach on this for me, and it's probably Pineapple Express and Step Brothers are the only other two that are like my trio of favorite comedies that I will always watch under any circumstance.
I do think this is probably, of like all those Sandler, Pauly Shore, like of all those comedy vehicle movies, this one definitely floats to the top. Like Black Sheep, I don't think hardly anybody even remembers as being a movie, and a lot of people was like,
as this because they're kind of
it was kind of a reverse Tommy Boy.
Yeah. It's the
gags in Black Sheep and some music and stuff that this doesn't have. But the music in this, when they're singing, is some of the best shit. And the jokes, the inside jokes, and SNL is on while this is happening. And I mean, even somehow they got Adam Sandler in this movie by the end. When you see the college friends, Sandler's sitting there. And he shouldn't even be in this movie because Billy Madison came out at the same time. Like, contractually, he shouldn't even be there. It's just fun what they were able to do, and they all knew each other and the gags. But at the same time, it was a hard movie to make. At times, Farley and Sandler Farley and Spade hated each other, and they actually got in a fight on set where, like, Spade was, like, sitting on the ground, and Farley, like, smashes his sandwich in his hand, and they fight. And then they say, we need you on set, and they just go on set and act. And then the other weird thing I read about, the naked lady by the pool, right? That was David Spade's friend, and Farley started dating her. And that was the thing between the two of them because Spade wanted to date her. And so like they
okay.
constantly were stepping on each other. That they loved each other and they were funny, but then they would hate each other, and like it was tough, you know. So
It's
I mean,
so funny because it's
I was gonna say they're a good comedy duo because it's not just that Spade is playing like the straight man, but also he's got that really heavy sarcasm that plays so well
Spade has
against
so many good
Farley's
lines.
just
He has a
complete
million good lines. In
craziness.
You know,
Oh,
with the
yeah,
maps,
his
he's
lines.
like, "Look, Magellan," or what else he say? Okay, baby Huey. Like he just
Yeah.
rips him constantly about the wave.
Yeah. What's that one line? He's like, if you're done sitting there being not thin.
Yeah.
And they like the kids when they haze him in the boat, and they're like, "Hey, lady, there's a whale in the boat." Like the fat jokes just don't end in this movie. I feel bad.
Well,
for
No,
Farley.
I mean,
and when they
I
zoom out of the boat scene, and he's like, "Yeah, it's usually better if there's a little wind," and they zoom out, and the back end of the boat's like just in the
Yeah.
swamp.
It's like tipped. Yeah.
I wonder if there's anybody out there that watches this movie and doesn't crack a smile, like just thinks, "Oh, I hate Tommy Boy."
To that point, I mean, look,
you know, I wonder
we
if
all
anybody's like that.
Yeah, we all like this movie, but by the time you get to the end, if you have a bit of a critical eye, he walks into the bank and robs a bank. Then he comes back in with a bomb and threatens a bomb, and not one cop ever touches him for any reason. And I'm like, no, come on. I mean, you're lost in the moment, and it's cool, and it's like the They Live moment when he comes into the bank. That's what I think of. You know, the bubble gum.
that's the unaware, that's the not self-aware white privilege of a Paramount writer's room in 1995. Like, yeah, I mean, like he could do it twice. I think if we 3 times, it'd be too much. But
Yeah, and then when he goes upstairs, oh, they have a piece of paper that's a police report, and that just proves that they're married and all this other shit. No, the legal would drag on for 5 years. You wouldn't be able to sell the company or do anything. But it wraps up in a nice bow with Zelensky and the chase through the factory and whatever, and you know, Rob Lowe gets it in the nuts, which is hilarious, but none of it really would ever go that way, which I thought was funny. And by the end, it's a little fantastical that he actually is able to
when his shirt gets ripped off in that vacuum tube because he's just kind of up against it, and it's just like it's so unexpected because it's like it's a little awkward, and all of a sudden, boom, it's just that, and he's just like, I gotta go. And Rob Lowe actually plays really good in a comedy role in this too, as a straight guy again.
He's a little subplot that pays off by the end. Like randomly, Michelle's walking around and sees them making out, and that's what saves them. Like that's random. But like,
You know, I wasn't in love
Rob
with the
kills it.
Rob
He's
Lowe-
constantly getting
the
shit
Rob
on.
Lowe subplot.
He gets electrocuted when he's pissing. He gets attacked by the dog. He gets the shirt ripped off. Like he gets it in the nuts. I mean, he really takes it in this one. You know,
He does.
So there is some
felt
love.
like
There's
he
some
was fighting an uphill battle, anyways.
Yeah.
And to throw in the subplot of Rob Lowe like trying to sabotage everything was just.
and then he
another
loses
element.
his girl, Bo Derek, to Zelensky of all people. You know.
Well, you know, since we're on the Rob Lowe topic, I will tell a little Rob Lowe story, and then I'll have to transition to the chat
Yeah,
because
gotta
there's
go.
one there. But you know, one thing I love about Rob Lowe's career is that he was an A-list star, but due to some personal issues and a couple like film choices, his career was definitely spiraling down. And honestly, the thing that saved him was that he hosted SNL one time and was a great host and got in really good with everyone there. Like got Mike Myers' respect, got Dana Carvey's respect, got, you know, Chris Farley's respect, like all these guys. And that paid off dividends later with Wayne's World and then Tommy Boy. And he sort of became this good luck charm. And I think he says that, you know, so the difference between doing like Tommy Boy versus Spy Who Shagged Me, say, the Austin Powers sequel. It says when you're doing Austin Powers 2, you knew you're doing a classic because you're watching Mike Myers, this fat bastard, ad-lib the whole baby back ribs thing, you know, and you're like, this is obviously genius. Because like when I did Tommy Boy, I had no idea I was making a hit. But in the chat, the great Whiskey 41, or actually, the great Dustin Nino of Retro Fiend Radio.
Oh, Nino. El Nino.
The Nino, makers of the finest canon and martial arts documentaries around from Retro Fiend Radio. He says one of his favorite lines when Rob Lowe says, "What do you do for fun around here?" And Farley says, "Oh, we can cruise the livestock auction and check out the 4-H babes." As a former 4-H kid, I was dying. Says the Nino. That's the 4. I'm from the Midwest, but the 4-H thing goes a little bit over my head. Although I did once go to like a fair that had livestock, I guess. I was really confused. One of the worst nights of my life. Another story for another day. But I do want to thank everyone for tuning in. I see in the chat, Cobra Kai Never Dies, Whiskey 41, Dustin Nino, and Caitlin, all one America's Next Top Model. So thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. And again, to Angie Saunders and her family, I don't know if they're tuning in later or not, but I know they are in Texas where the hurricanes, the tornadoes and everything is crazy. So sending our best wishes to them, and hopefully they can watch Cobra Kai tonight because they're as big of a fan as I am. But anyway.
Oh yeah, that new season. Yeah.
The new season tonight at 3 a.m. Set your alarms, folks.
3 a.m. Is it really? Okay.
3 a.m. East Coast time.
Yeah. The show that which I have enjoyed, I'm not going to lie, but the show that if at any point anybody had called the police, game over for the rest of the series. I mean, it was like that whole show's entire existence is contingent on nobody ever calling the police, but instead wanting to karate it out.
Kind of like Tommy Boy. Calling the cops. Oh, and when there are cops, bees, go away. There's bees, you know. I can't believe that worked. They can't ever work.
Your weapons are useless against them.
You know what?
Oh,
that's
man.
honestly, I bet you that's a real.
It.
I can guarantee that's a real bit because there's a lot of bits in this that we were saying were real, like the weight room bit and stuff that Farley used to just do. I bet you that's a real Farley family bit. They grew up in Wisconsin, like. I mean, you probably don't even have to do it.
No, Chris, you're right.
You know?
So I have a buddy from Illinois, and we went up there one time, whatever. But the story I got was that his dad speeds home from work all the time, and he blows by this cop, and the cop doesn't chase him, doesn't pull him over, just meets him at his house, and then gives him a ticket at his house. That's like the Midwest way to do it, you know? And that's like what this is. You're a cop. You got to do your job. I know you. We went to high school together. But bees! Ah, you don't want the bees, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm allergic to bees. Me too. Let's get out of here.
The shade of Super Troopers right there. Like that almost feels like a bit out of Super Troopers right there.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh man, Super Troopers is another movie in desperate
But
need
that's
of
what this movie is. It's just like bit after bit and gag after gag, and then we get to the plot, you know, which I love with this movie because you know the plot.
That's what I was kind of curious about was like how much of this story. I mean, I'm guessing it was written for Farley with him in mind to begin with, or whatever. But the because like some movies they'll take a script and then they'll rework it and then they'll say, oh, we're going to make a sequel to Columbo or something to that effect, or you know what I mean? It's like they're just. Somebody writes a murder mystery and then we're going to rework it and put this character in, or we're going to make it a Stallone action movie or whatever you want to call it. But in this case, I feel like this was written specifically for Farley and specifically written again, kind of around his gags or his own, the stuff that he did. The fat guy in little coat. I think I had seen that he did that offset beforehand.
Yeah.
And Spade and Farley did that in The Office a lot. Yeah.
But it's interesting. I often argue about the Wayne's World 2 thing because Wayne's World 2 is really a lot of recycled bits from SNL from the show, and a lot of people hate it for that reason. I happen to love Wayne's World 2, but I can also see the validity of what they're saying. But the thing that works about it is it's just got enough heart. And that's the case of for Tommy Boy is that. Like, you really care. Like, I still get sad when Big Tom Callahan dies. I'm still like, oh, man, that's awful. Like, poor, you're really rooting for this guy. And they do a great job. Like, I fancy myself a writer. So one thing I always, admire is when you set up a character well. And, like, I just love the intro, him just getting shit on left and right as a kid, he's, getting shit on left and right, transition to, like, college age.
The gags repeat. He walks into a glass door like 3 times. Yeah. The son of a thing comes up like 5 times. Yeah.
And only Farley could make that work, but again, we did mention
when he does
Black
that
Sheep.
thing where he grabs his hair and just pulls it, and it's
so
I mean, that's such a Farley thing, and that's SNL all over the place too. You know what I mean? But
yeah, housekeeping was a Farley thing. That was like there's a lot of Farley
inside jokes.
There was,
and
I'll tell you, one of the things
fun too. There's a lot of inside jokes. Like when you see his grades in the beginning, it says Helen Keller got an F. It says Michael Jackson got a D-, and then later, when the M&Ms go on the car, it's a handwritten sticker that says 69. Like they just did stupid shit because they could, Yeah. I love it.
It's like such a nostalgic movie too, because it was like it was the end of that whole type of business to business marketing where you would get in your car and you would drive the country and you would go from one business to the next business selling your wares, whatever they may be. And I mean, you couldn't really make this movie again today because this generation doesn't understand that way of selling, where you go face to face. This is the owner of the company. You're trying to sell your products. It was really the end of that era of sales. And I was kind of in that realm a little bit. And my grandfather was in that realm really heavily. And the nostalgia is really heavy on that front. You couldn't remake it in that way. The same way with planes, trains, and automobiles, like you were talking about earlier. I mean, how can you not get from point A to point B today? You know, there's 1,000 Ubers ready to just take you wherever you want to go. You know, you can't just get stranded.
Well, it's funny you say that.
Yeah.
You say that, Preston. But with the heat lately, a bunch of trains have been getting stuck, like between New York and Boston and stuff like that. So it does happen. But you're right. We're in a modern age. Everything is much more modern. It's much easier to get around.
It's so different. Yeah, it's just a different lifestyle.
Yeah, it was a physical thing then. You know, it was physical product, physical shipping. Now it's made in India. You drop ship it. You try to get it cheap. Like, yeah, it doesn't matter.
Right.
But they do some things in this movie. When they talk about that guarantee on the box, that's pretty good. You know, the shit in a box and the guarantee. I love all that stuff. And I love the montages. The sales montages are awesome. When he hits it and the guy's finally like, okay, I'll buy from you. His jaw like hits the floor. He can't believe it, you know, and he fancies himself this salesman.
Yeah.
But I liked how they flip it, you know. Then for the third act, they put him as far as possible. Michelle messed up. You know, Rob Lowe's plan. He saves the day. She sees them making out. Like, every character has a role to play in this movie, and without them, it doesn't work. There's like the Three Stooges guys. They're like three business guys that are like Moe, Larry, Curly. Like, there's lots of little nods with these characters and what they're doing. And without them, you don't get it. And you don't get little gags like the wedding when he's videotaping the one guy, and the guy's like, oh, yeah, Tom's wife, you look good. I want a piece of that. And then he's like, oh, shit. Like, edit. Like,
real prick.
I love that aesthetic, the video camera aesthetic at the wedding. I think
that was so 90s too. That was such a
And when she gets out of the pool and he's like, wow, she's a 10, and it's Bo Derek.
Yeah, from the movie 10.
That always got a laugh out of me was at the end when he's kind of addressing all the employees and he's like, you know, I lost my virginity to your daughter for Christ's sake. And then he goes, Tom, you were there or whatever.
And then he runs away. What the hell was he doing there? Yeah.
That's so good.
It's just like that 1-2 punch that is, and it's so fluid. And with his conversation, it's supposed to be this, you know, kind of this moment of like revering his friendships with all these people. And he just throws that out there and then follows up with an immediate punch that throws somebody else under the bus. It's, you know.
Well, I always took that as totally just him just fucking with that guy, RT or whatever, because RT fucked with him earlier.
Him. Remember,
yeah,
he's like,
oh, you see these letters? That's
after
a state.
Columbus?
Yeah. And that's a great, you know, God, the actress's name who is in Doc Hollywood, who plays Michelle. I
forget. Yeah.
Oh God damn, that's gonna kill me. But at any rate, Julie Taylor, I think it is.
Nice.
I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's Julie Taylor. I love her though. She was a staple of this era. But that's a great line when she comes in. And she's like, "Oh, don't be worried about don't be upset about RT. He's just upset because he just found out what a loser he is." And Chris Farley, yeah, what a loser he like. It's so well played, and it's like it's got this little beating heart underneath it all. And like as a road movie, it's got that John Hughes beating heart. And I don't know, there's so much I love about it. It's one of Dan Aykroyd's like favorite. Like this and Great Outdoors, I think, are two of my favorite Aykroyd performances. And I'll die on the hill.
Chris. He showed up for 2 days and he got that done.
It looks like it. I mean, he just has. First of all, he does the quintessential Chicago accent. And
oh my God!
We had a great.
He nails it.
We had a great voice actor on here recently from Geek Fire Inc. Richard Zuniga. So I'll do this quickly, but I think I can comfortably do the Dan Aykroyd that like. Yeah, I make car parts for the American working man because that's what I am and that's what I care about. Like,
I didn't even think of that.
That's good. No, that was good.
Yeah,
he is. It is just like the brother-in-law from Great Outdoors finally got success in the car industry because they have that exact same cadence and speech pattern.
Yeah.
You know, it's like tomorrow we'll go get ourselves a jet boat. You know what I mean? And
you want a cruise the lake.
There was one other line.
Those lobster tails are $29 a pound. You know,
lips and assholes. Yeah.
There was one other line from Zelensky to what you're talking about, and he goes, and I'll try and do it now too. And he goes, "God, I love that." He says something like that. He's like,
Yeah,
"God,
I
I
love
love
that."
that. And it's
Yeah,
and it's like
so
the God
Chicago.
part, and
It
then
is, yeah.
yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, I love
yeah,
that.
it's so good. Oh man, you did that very well. I gotta say.
So
as a
Scott,
former
you were
Midwesterner,
talking
I
about who this
approve.
was written for and stuff like that. So one thing I want to point to that someone had pointed out, I don't know if this is true or not, but like Richard is the car, right? The entire thing I think was written, and then they put David Spade in it, and they make him as Tom's number 2. Okay, he's the business guy, but the car is Richard's identity. It's everything he cares about. Tommy destroys the car by the end of the movie. And
it's the little pieces at a time. It's the leaving the oil thing under the hood, so the hood flies off, and backing it up and ripping the door off. Then the deer,
the beer, all of it, right?
Yeah. Well, even
so by the
even
time
starts
they're
up
at the
with the
end,
M&Ms
they wanna
going
go
down
to
the vents.
Chicago.
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole time he's just shitting the car. Yeah. So by the time they got to go to Chicago, Richard buys in and he's going with Tommy. So when they pull up, the guy says, "You can't park there," and he just throws the guys the seat keys and says, "Keep it." The next time they're alone, when it's all over, sitting on the bench, they are friends. And Richard is now, he's bald and he's got the hat. It's like they've revealed each other. They like each other. They're friends. They're both different people. Richard has like evolved. He's like a moth who's become a butterfly, and he now has this friend. And he says it on the bench. He goes, "I know it doesn't mean much to you. You don't have any friends, and you are my friend now." And to me, there's a little bit of a transformative moment with Spade, where Spade is here, and he does a good job. And I see that in the movie, and I'd never seen that before. I had read that in my last viewing, and I thought that was cool. I thought that was very cool.
I think Spade he was always kind of a second player in any movie if he was in movies. I mean, he never.
Joe Dirt is the only time he really kind of.
Oh yeah. Spade must be a car guy, because both those movies revolve around old classic Mopars.
Yeah, you have a point. Maybe he does. Maybe he is a car guy. I don't know.
I totally agree, and because we're constantly, and this movie is just generally going to constantly be compared against Black Sheep, all these things that we're kind of singing the praises of are sort of things that like Black Sheep doesn't really have. And I like Black Sheep. I think it's a really solid 90s outing, but it just doesn't have like the heart and all that extra, that shit that lives around forever like this movie does. Like I took a sales class, and I remember the sales teacher taught this movie. So it's a great movie to learn sales. Everything about its confidence is true. It's blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But I do want to point out in the live chat, I see Angie Saunders has joined the live chat. So thank you so much for tuning in, Angie. We assume that everyone is safe and well, and we're so happy to see you back in the live chat. And we hope you're as excited as we are for Cobra Kai tonight at 3 a.m. East Coast time. And also, Whiskey41 pointing out that it's Julie Warner, not Julie Taylor. I was so close, yet so far away. But hey, Ian's not here. So someone's got to shit all over these names and make a reference to gas station pizza and docking.
God, I love that.
Yeah, I love that. When you put your kid in your cruiser, I want you to feel safe when you get on that road. You know, like it's like that road. It's almost Minnesotan, because Dan Aykroyd's from Canada, so I think he overdoes it just a little bit, But
could have done without that. Yeah, totally.
So yeah, oh my god, yeah.
There's so many good lines.
I
bubbly,
use the ice to cool down your marbles and have some champagne on me. Yeah.
I've got a plan.
But
the only thing that makes me really sad is he's gone 2 years after this movie, and it's like, oh man. Well, and he was clean. He was sober for this movie, they say.
Yeah.
He would have 27 cappuccinos a day, if you can believe that. I don't even know how that's humanly possible.
I believe it. I used to drink that much coffee.
Really?
But I used to took an extra large Dunkin' to go to bed, and I wondered why I couldn't fucking sleep. I was nuts. But
literally like tweaking out.
Yeah, At any rate, that and cigarettes, I used to smoke like 2 packs a day, but those days are behind me. So now I sip chai tea. Any rate, so all right, it's what we're here to do, right? We're here to pitch a Tommy Boy sequel. And the beauty of it is there are no rules in VCR land. So if you want to do like we often do and pitch a time travel sequel. You want to pitch the 1996 Tommy Boy sequel that we should have got before Chris Farley left us, by all means. If you want to pitch the 40 years later as if he's still alive, by all means. If you want to pitch a total offshoot, you want to pitch an animated, there are no rules. So what do you want to see in a Tommy Boy sequel? What don't you want to see in a Tommy Boy sequel?
Yeah.
And that goes especially for everyone in the live chat.
My simplest pitch that I want is the beginning. Those kids are only in it for a minute, but they're awesome, and they set the tone for the whole movie. And neither one of those kids ever did anything else, really. The one kid who plays young Tommy, he literally never acted again, and I can't figure out why. And the kid who was Spade did Goosebumps in 95 and Degrassi The Next Generation in 08. That was it. But for me, without the kid Tommy in the beginning, you don't have any of it. And I want to see Tommy grow up. I want to see that. I really do.
So you want the Dumb and Dumber approach?
That's what I was thinking.
Tommy Boy.
Dumb and Dumber.
Yeah, and I know that's bad, but I just think I think the young Tommy kid was so good, and literally when he walks into a plate glass later, the little kid did it better, you know. And when Chris Farley gets hit and goes, son of a, the kid did it better. Like, I just think that kid really sets the stage for the character. And without that, and I feel like I really did want young Tommy and Tommy growing up and a young Brian Dennehy and all that. And to see Tommy's mom, maybe, you know, at some point. And how she died or whatever, you know.
You know, I'm also
smart about doing this VCR Redux a little bit is because we sit here and kind of pitch this stuff in theoretical, you know, terms, but this is also sadly kind of the reality we sort of live in anymore, where it's like, oh, let's do a reboot or delayed sequel to this movie or what, you know, like so much. And I was talking to somebody about this the other day, where it's like almost everything is being plucked from the 80s or the early 90s, but it just seems like everybody's selling our nostalgia back to us. So it's like, okay, let's get the old actors that are still alive, but they have kids or they have grandkids now. We're going to try to quote unquote
my least favorite arc. My least favorite arc is the like, oh, now they have kids. Like, oh, okay, great. You know,
yeah, I mean, they did it with what Ghostbusters, Bill and Ted. You know, and it's this thing where
the legacy, the legacy sequel, like the easiest pitch here is Son of Tommy Boy and Tommy as a kid, or you could play Chris Farley dead and the kid has to save the factory now or something. But maybe you go with what Preston was talking about, that sales is so much different now, and how do you do that? And maybe they're competing with Amazon or something. I don't know. But that
that's what leads into the pitch that I would have.
Oh, yeah, you know, the other
that's
thing,
what would lead into the pitch that I would have, is that they're competing in a new business-to-business
market,
sales
world.
They just can't compete with.
And cars have gone overseas, right? GM went to Mexico. That was a big deal.
Right, they've got the manufacturing to deal with. They've got the competition to deal with. There's a lot more than just the Rob Lowe aspect and the can't get any sales aspect. You know, there's.
But the way this movie did it was so much funnier. And I thought some of what was cool with this movie is part of the reason that Callahan is having a problem is because Big Tom bit off more than he could chew. He built this whole new factory and didn't really have a plan and didn't really finish it, you know? So I thought that was interesting that Big Tom is this guy that everybody loves, and but he kind of put them in a spot with the money that he spent, and he kind of, his eyes were bigger than they should have been, you know? I mean, nobody plans to die, but it's like instantly in the movie they're like, well, Big Tom's dead, Callahan's gonna die with it, like that's it, and leads to the funniest line I think in the movie is this little skit with that couple at the table, and they talk about the thing going under, and she goes, man, and Rob Lowe's like, excuse me, what? And then they launch into it and they tell you, he's like, I was a GI and I went to a brothel one time and I've never heard the end of it. I'm like, that's awesome. That's a real couple somewhere. That's awesome.
And then David Spade chimes in just a little bit later at that same dinner, and he's like, I like her idea better. When he's like, he can come with
everybody loves her.
I like her idea.
Yeah.
And you know they did a lot of takes, and it was probably a lot of fun. And they do a 2-shot, which is her and her husband, and just the line is perfect. His reaction is perfect. Rob Lowe's reaction is Dave. It's a stand-up bit. What's so funny here is if Mickey was here, he would either be totally with this or not because he doesn't like SNL, but I'm sure he likes.
Oh,
this movie.
He's not a fan of this movie.
He's not a fan of SNL. Doesn't watch any SNL, but knows all these guys from their movies. So I'm sure he would be a fan of Tommy and Tommy Boy, but he wouldn't be necessarily a fan of the gags he did in this. And a lot of those gags are here. He breaks the table, and Tommy Boy did it in SNL first. And I just, to me, to ignore the SNL thing is to ignore a big chunk of things. But Mickey pulls it off, and he's watched all these movies, so it's kind of interesting to me. A shout out to Mickey.
Oh, we love Mickey. And also, I see in the chat, Angie Saunders replies that she's just happy to have power. So we are very happy that you have power. And again, thank you so much for using it to tune in. VCR loves the Saunders clan, the mashup genius. So, and also there's some quotes. I see Crash Anderson, the great Steven Zangief Anderson in the chat saying, who's your favorite little rascal? Little rascal. Is it Alfalfa or Spanky?
Spanky.
So I always love that joke. That whole bit is just a great scene.
I wonder if she's dating a Yankee.
It's one of those weird things that every movie has, like, there's two things in every movie, or every classic movie, I should say. There's a line where I'm like, what the fuck did he actually say there? And then there's a line where that's like, oh, it's the weirdest line in the movie. It was just like, it's delivered so weird. And I always use the Happy Gilmore example of Happy Look Out, ah! Like, that's the only take that they had of that, clearly, because it's such a weird delivery. But in that scene where he's like, you figure out all the scientific stuff. The only thing I got to figure out is how we're going to get Chicago style or a thin crust. Or I'm like, do you say Chicago style in a thin crust or a thin crust? Like, what the, like, it always clicks me. As someone from Chicago, and like, of course, we're famous for deep dish pizza, but there's, of course, the thin crust as well. But I think of that still as more of like a St. Louis thing, maybe, or like a Cincinnati.
Yeah.
I know these places should not be fucking known for their pizza. I know, but like, I just think that's how where that thin crust style really came from is from, I think, St. Louis or Cincinnati. But as a pizza fan, this bugs me, and I get lost in the weeds. Getting back to Tommy Boy, what you were saying before about the young Tommy.
No, he's making a good point though, because they do say.
Oh, did you freeze up? So the thing about the young Tommy,
I think so.
Oh, okay, you are back. The thing I was gonna say about the young Tommy is it gives me two vibes. One, on the good side, it could be Romy and Michelle, the young Romy and Michelle, maybe the best thing that ABC Family ever did. Which I wish that would have been more of a success. But on the bad side, it could be like the young, Tommy Callahan Chronicles, the young Indiana Jones. You don't want it to be edutainment where it's like, oh, we did sales, now every week we're gonna do something else, and like this week it's music, and next week it's literature, and then next it's theater, and then it's
No, you make a good point, because like at one point Spade is ripping on Farley, and he says the thing about I think your brain has a thick candy shell, and then later he says something about, what is the line? It's like malt hong resin.
Oh yeah, I remember the line. You're freezing up where he's like the 1.5%. Why can't I remember that? Try an association. They said the average person uses 10% of their brain. How much do you use? 1.5%. The rest is all clogged up with malted hops and bong resin.
Right.
Yeah, sorry guys, I got some big thunderstorms here in New York, and it's messing with my internet, I think. So
yeah,
apologies.
we got a few of those too. No worries. We're always.
It kind of occurred to me too that like if they were going to try to do a late sequel, because I kind of feel like Hollywood could get that cynical. Although again, I don't think Farley is replaceable. But I was thinking like they'd probably, who do you think they'd plug in? Like Jack Black probably as Tommy Boy. You know what I mean? He seems like the one who would be. Well,
you think they'd plug his brother in somewhere too? Chris Farley's brother would get into this somehow.
Now that I might watch if they tried to plug Jack Black in there. I don't think I'd be a viewer.
A big Tom.
Yeah,
I don't know about Jack Black. That's a good idea. Maybe Tenacious D in general, but
well, it's like
I don't think they should by any means. But he seems like the actor that would be the most likely to fit into this character. Do you know what I mean?
It's interesting. I've often wondered why they did Blues Brothers 2000 with John Goodman instead of Jim Belushi. When Jim Belushi does the Blues Brothers act with Dan Aykroyd live. So it's like a weird, and he wanted nothing to do with the movie, and I think it's out of respect for his brother's roles, whatever. I would imagine Chris Farley's brother, I think it's Kevin Farley, who is clearly visible, talking about cameos, at the wedding table right next to Chris. You know, I need you, Tommy boy.
Yep.
You know, he's right there.
Not your brother.
Yeah, I don't know. I would see it. I don't know if I want to see recasting, but I would not mind the Teen Wolf 2 approach, maybe, where it's like, oh, it's your cousin. Like, or it'd almost be interesting if you got Jim Belushi, who never did anything of his brothers, but to do something of Chris Farley's. Where it's like he could be like the Callahan cousin or something. Now, he'd be too old. That would have been better in the 90s, of course.
Yeah.
I
think the only thing that makes sense, that stays respectful, is if Lorne Michaels is involved, a lot of people from SNL is involved, and it's kind of a love fest towards Chris Farley. But that doesn't really feel like a sequel, so I don't know. But yeah, I think adjacent is a better way to go, like you were saying, Chris, like a cousin or something close, where Tommy exists in the universe, but it isn't necessarily about Callahan and selling brake pads anymore. It's
you could probably spin something off with Rob Lowe and David Spade.
Oh, I like that, actually. Yeah. Make them have to work together somehow. That's always like an interesting approach. Yeah.
You could always keep Farley in it by starting the movie with like a telephone call, and then have like a Farley voice actor, a Farley impersonator, who's like, you need to go do this thing, we're crashing, and then they're like, hold on.
Or it starts up with Farley's character having just passed away, and now Spade has to carry the load, and somehow he gets looped in with Rob Lowe, although they both play snarky and sarcastic straight men, so I don't know if that would work as well.
True. They may have their vibe may be a little too similar.
The scam skeezy element has to be there with Rob too. So either he's coming back to like rob something or scam them or something. Like there has to be another scam element, I think.
Or he's coming back for the company for his community service. Now he has to work for him for free because he tried to fuck him over.
That's a good one. Community service. That's a good one. Yeah.
Oh, that is actually pretty good.
Finally gets cops involved.
It's like the Seinfeld pitch where he's like, he gets in an accident, and now the guy's got to be his butler. Remember that? That was the whole
That was the premise
make it another buddy
Seinfeld
comedy
within
where you
Seinfeld.
smash them. Yeah, that's good.
Right.
Oh my God, yes, so ridiculous. Fucking A. I think that the most challenging thing is like if you were gonna do it today, and I just as a throw in a wrinkle here, right? So one thing I've always been a fan of is I love what I affectionately call the other guys, right? I love the Beavises, the Alex Winters, if you will, the Chris Kattan. And I remember back in the day, Chris Kattan was the leading guy, and Will Ferrell was supposed to be the other guy.
Right.
But I love these sort of like unsung other guys, the David Spades, if you will. And I don't know if Tommy Boy is it, but I've always wanted a movie that features a bunch of them, and it's sort of like the comedy Expendables, if you will. Where you have all the guys that never really got the lead, like all their co-stars got famous.
All of them,
Dana Carvey, exactly. Thank you. Like you totally get it.
Mike Myers hasn't been doing a lot ever since Love Guru. Maybe you could plug him in as a plant employee, and he has to go out with David Spade to deal with stuff or whatever. Because I mean, at least Mike Myers could still probably do some of the zany stuff. You know what I mean? And be.
Well, you really hit on something, Scott. They say.
He'd be a good villain too.
They framed Spade and Farley in this movie as like Shrek and Donkey. That was kind of like what they were thinking or something. So Mike Myers is definitely someone who can bring that. And I get what they're going for. Like, it's kind of flipped, right? Shrek is
Oh, Michael may be frozen again. Or maybe bad internet on my end.
No, sorry.
What do you think about what do you think about making some kind of an in-universe thing or whatever, where like Billy Madison somehow acquires the plant and has to team up with David Spade, you know what I mean? And you get Adam Sandler. its thing going, you know.
You get Billy Boy instead of Tommy Boy.
Yeah, there you go.
Bridge the gap. That's not bad, honestly. It's a way to kill two birds with one stone. I really actually like that a lot.
Yeah, I do too.
The more that sits, the more that fits. To tell you the truth.
Because they both start out as kind of like man-childs that sort of get mature and redeemed at the end of their movies, but you know, you can tell Sandler's still going to be a total goofball or whatever. But you know, it was maybe Madison Hotels. You know how mergers are at this point. Different companies wind up together for all kinds of weird reasons. So through some acquisition thing, you know, he's heir to Madison Hotels, and now somehow he's involved with Callahan Auto Parts. Maybe it's a property dispute or whatever it is. I don't know.
No, you make a great point. They're both Nepo babies. They were both born into big companies. That's a great connection. I like it.
Oh yeah. Now the sad part is that like it's gonna invoke a better movie, which would be Sandler and Farley as the Nepo babies. And that's like, you know, some kind of road movie that you'd want to see. And like I would love to figure out how you get the road movie back into it, because I think it's a genre that's long gone that we kind of miss.
Because Madison Hotels, they've got to go to the different hotel properties for whatever
and sell
reason.
them on stuff.
Maybe David Spade, the Callahan plant closes, David Spade gets brought into Madison Hotels as an assistant to Adam Sandler, and he's got to travel to literally physically examine properties or whatever, you know what I mean? And he's like, hey, I like what you did with Callahan Parts. You're going to be my right-hand guy. And then it's those two going out to the different hotel
Farley's the one that can turn a company around.
You know, it's funny. I was just about to pitch something that I was like, I was just about to pitch something. I was like, how do you get David Spade around someone a little more unpredictable, a little bit more crazy? And I was just thinking, oh, Gary Busey. But then I'm like, fucking idiot. They did that in Black Sheep. That's exactly what they do in Black Sheep. And like, I think they play that for, you know, all that it's probably worth. You know, David Spade pisses himself.
Well, for me, it's a little bit of a rip of Dan Aykroyd maybe from the second one, but of Caddyshack in general. To just crazy ex-military guy that does stuff. Like Bill Murray, first one, and Dan Aykroyd
talk about a choice, Dan Aykroyd, for playing that. Like, you pull the arrow, I'll suck out the poison.
Yeah, I hate him in that one.
Yeah. I mean, there's on the all-time list. What's up?
Dan Aykroyd in what, Caddyshack 2?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And on the all-time list of like SNL actors doing weird voices, that is in my all-time least favorite. But one thing that is my most favorite is I see Gold's Coat.
Farley does some weird voices in this one. Oh yeah. Go for it.
Yeah, Farley's not offensive, you know.
Okay, sorry.
Nice.
Yes, the voice of God giving us a little bit of pep talk there. Sorry if we seem distracted for a second. But Gold's Coat is in the chat, so I can't wait to see what kind of airborne pitches he comes with. Is it going to be Tommy Born or is it going to be Airboy?
Or it's going to be not at all because Ian isn't here.
Ian, you know, I hope Ian's watching at home or watches after the fact or something. But he's not in heaven. He's in Iowa, folks. It's the next closest thing. So I have a feeling he's building something that's going to make Kevin Costner come. But I'm getting back to Tommy Boy and out of my lame jokes. So
that was definitely
corny. Corny, nice, well played, sir. I love that double entendre. Field of Dreams is another VCR movie, another movie that needs the VCR treatment. Right?
Because you shouldn't do a sequel to it. That's why, right?
That's why they're my favorites. So what are the Tommy Boy sequels that were thank God we didn't get? Like who's the guy who's on Mad TV who's also in Beverly Hills Ninja? Who's Will Sasso? Like I'm thankful we didn't get like, you know, Tommy Boy 2 with Will Sasso in like 1999. That would have been awful. Will Sasso and David Spade.
He was bad enough in that Three Stooges movie. No Will Sasso.
I don't think Will Sasso's bad per se. I just think Mad TV was not it for me. Like
he's not leading any movie. He is not the main character in any movie, and he shouldn't be. He's a good delivers some funny lines sometimes.
To be fair, not to go too off tangent again, but Beverly Hills Ninja, which also needs the VCR treatment. Will Sasso in Beverly Hills Ninja is probably my favorite Will Sasso ever, where he's just like, I'm a shitty car salesman who makes crappy jokes. Like, I think that is brilliant. Like, I know a guy who started out in AAA, ended up in AA.
Chris, I don't know what that voice is, but you got to do more of that. That's good.
Oh, man.
Getting all up in the camera.
I know
that's your new voice. That's just your new normal.
Yep.
Next week, next week I'll be wearing like a plaid blazer and I'll be hosting the show in a very different.
Hello, digital people. How are you?
I got a cigar. And, I feel like I'm one of those guys in Johnny Be Good that's trying to convince Anthony Michael Hall to come to their college. Like, it's good to see the seasons change.
Yeah.
Oh man, there was a lot of tweed and plaid in that movie.
There was. That movie's another one that needs the VCR treatment. It is a classic. So if you want to see any of these films on a future episode, you know where to.
We're also going to get Judas Priest to do a cover of Johnny Be Good, for God's sake. I mean,
all right, we're going down this rabbit hole because that is too good. That is a brilliant. That's the best. It's the most covered song in the history of covered songs, and no one should ever fucking do it again because Judas Priest and Chuck Berry have done it to perfection. No one can touch it. No one can touch that. I'm sorry, Bob Dylan. I'm sorry, Bruce Springsteen. I'm sorry, the great Michael J. Fox. He can hit the J chord like no one else can, but you can't do Judas Priest, Johnny Be Good. Oh, perfection. Rob Halford is a god. We don't deserve Rob Halford.
I forgot Robert Downey Jr. is in that movie too, isn't he? That was back in the RDJ where he was always the second man, kind of in the back.
So that movie is totally the two of them being like, yo, I don't know about this script, but like I got a lot of blow and it's gonna be a really quick shoot and we'll just make up shit as we go. And like this movie reeks of like cocaine improvisation. It really does. Like
you got to do a VCR Redux on Tough Turf.
You did it, Chris. You got cocaine in the show with 4 minutes left.
Thank God for that. No, but I'm sorry, but Robert Downey Jr. going on about how he wants to like work at a restaurant and develop a reputation with like as the best member of the wait staff, and then wait till the owner's family is in, take all their orders, wine them, dine them, and then tell them actually it's the fish or nothing. Like weird shit tangent comedy like that is brilliant. And Downey, like he was sharpening his Iron Man fangs in that film. And to bring it back to Tommy Boy, I could see him as a good Tommy Boy villain in a new Tommy Boy.
Yes, I was just thinking that a big
Ian
wants
RDJ in everything. Beyond that,
I gotta say, you were saying that about RDJ. What about him in Natural Born Killers?
Oh, great! Yeah,
he's pretty nuts in that movie too.
That is pretty nuts. Yeah, that's true.
Actually, maybe you could bring him and Spader.
Crazy media.
Maybe you could bring him and Spader back for a sequel to Tough Turf with and get Kim Richards in there too.
I'll tell you what, I wouldn't mind James Spader in a Tommy Boy movie, the Tommy Boy villain or something like that. Spader and Lowe
Spader
somehow.
A good villain?
You know what? Somehow Spader and Lowe. They need to do. I need the Bad Influence like reunion. For those of you that know that, Curtis Hanson
would be the one with the head on his shoulders, though. Rob would be the one flying off the handle with stuff, and Spader be like, "No, we're gonna take it easy."
You know what? Honestly,
that's Bad Influence.
With all of the nostalgia that is being sold back to us, particularly from the '80s, and they even just did this documentary Brats with. Was Andrew McCarthy and Rob Lowe and all those guys show up. But how have they not gotten like Molly Ringwald and all of those 80s people back for just some generic movie, but with all of them plugged in as actors from the 80s? Because we would all go pay to see that shit.
We've been trying to write that on this show for like 150 plus episodes now.
Yeah, you did Sound Almost Fire a little while ago. Yeah.
Well, Ian came close on actually one of our first John Hughes episodes where he pitched Shermer. It's a series that intertwines every John Hughes movie of the 80s together. Like there's the different Molly Ringwalds, there's Leah Thompson, there's Eric Stoltz, there's Mary Stuart Masterson, the different Anthony Michael Halls. And you know what? I'm game for it. And speaking of Hall and Downey, there is so fucking sure as shit a version in a multiverse where Tommy Boy was made 10 years earlier, and those are the two guys that it starred, because They were actually both on SNL, and people don't realize this is that glorious 85-86 season of SNL. And yes, Anthony Michael Hall and Robert Downey Jr. were official cast members, and they were like 17 or 16. It was incredible. They weren't the greatest cast members ever, but they had some really great bits. But I think we have pitched and unpitched Tommy Boy as much as we can in the limited amount of time that we have. But before we wrap it up and say goodnight, is there anything you guys have got going on you want to let the people at home know about coming up in the works? Everyone go at once.
Nothing.
Well,
I guess next month I've got, what are we in? We're in July, so I've got Kentucky State Fair next month, the 15th through the 25th. I'm gonna have 4 entries into that.
Wow.
So we'll see how that goes. And then in the last, I don't know, we were getting ready to go on at like 8:52, and in honor of our Tommy Boy episode, I made a little wooden Callahan auto park sign. So just for this episode, now I've got a little extra build there. So that's all I've got going on.
Yeah, you put it up on the brick back there, and it'll look like it's in Sandusky. Yeah.
Oh,
Nice.
All right.
Nice.
Last minute pitch.
Nothing big to pitch. We still got. Go ahead, Chris.
Oh, I was just gonna say, last minute pitch, because I see the Callahan sign, it makes me think, what if another famous Callahan crossed into this universe and somehow Dirty Harry, Clint Eastwood himself, had to go on a road trip with Spade? What would that be like? And you know what? I bet it'd be pretty good. Cranky old Clint Eastwood would not put up with any of Spade's shit. And I just want Spade to be like, well, I hope so, because I'm laying it on pretty thick.
Pretty thick.
One of my favorite lines. But what were you gonna say, Mike?
No, I was just gonna say nothing too new to hype up. Just that we got a premiere date for the American Story Show. That's September 17th on FX. I spent about a year working on that, so that'll be a lot of fun to watch. They're going to air the first 2 episodes that day, and FX has a lot of good stuff for us this fall. So I know TV's been a little thin, but we're getting back to work. There should be a lot more to see. I'm working on a Netflix show now that I can't talk too much about, but that'll be great. And just know that we're out there making more TV for all you sinners. And I know it's been a little dry lately, but now we're starting to see more. More is going to come. We're going to get to the end of some things too, which is good.
Thank God for FX, because I'll tell you what, when all the other TV and streaming fail you, FX has got something that came out this year that's fire. Always. Every
if you
season.
haven't seen it, and I didn't work on it, nothing like that, but they just came out with the 2nd season of Hit Monkey on Hulu, which I have liked. And that kind of has been quiet this week because, yes, it is Kung Fu and stuff like that, but there's a much bigger... So...
Well, some of the digital overlords don't like whatever you're pitching now because you're freezing up again. But I guess that's time for me to say that you
the ring's cocked.
Yeah, but you Fandom fans might want to tune in next Wednesday at 9 p.m. when we ask what Bruce Willis is talking about for our 5th Element episode. As always, if you enjoyed this video, the best way to help is to smash that like button and leave a comment telling us what movie or TV franchise that you want us to cover on a future episode of VCR Redux. And since you're already doing that, you might as well go ahead and like, subscribe, and follow the Bearded Miniatures, Fandom Spotlight, and Pop Culture Punk. Till then, back up those Betamax, rewind those Laserdiscs, and we'll see you at the movies.
Holy shnikes.